California Democratic Senator Kamala Harris officially announced early today, that she's entering the 2020 presidential race, making her the first African-American candidate to join this race. She's in the top tier, of course, of presidential contenders, currently made up entirely of women. It's Kamala Harris, of course, Elizabeth Warren, and Kirsten Gillibrand, the senator from New York. In Harris's first press conference as a presidential candidate, NBC's Andrea Mitchell today asked her why she was the best person to beat Donald Trump. Let's watch.
I love my country. I love my country. And I feel a sense of responsibility to stand up and fight for the best of who we are. And I'm prepared to fight, and I know how to fight. And in particular, when we're talking about fighting for the values that we hold sacred and dear, when it comes to talking about how we fight for the American people and have leadership in this country that is focused on the needs of the people instead of self-interest, I'm prepared to fight that way. And I believe it will be a winning fight.
But 17 or more other Democrats say that they love their country. Why are you better than they?
I think the voters will decide, ultimately.
I'm joined now by Ruth Marcus, deputy editorial page editor for the Washington Post. Jamal Simmons, Democratic strategist, worked on Bill Clinton's race, Al Gore's race, and some winners in there. And James Pindell, political reporter for the Boston Globe. I got to go to James because I love the second contest of the 2020 race will be in New Hampshire. And historically, the person from the nearest state tends to win up there. Has Warren got that locked up?
No, because there's another senator from a neighboring state who won last time by 22 points, and his name is Bernie Sanders. Right now in the state, there's a Bernie wing right now, and that you can include along that with Tulsi Gabbard or Jeff Merkley, the others on that Bernie wing. And then, Elizabeth Warren has had a very strong few weeks in her campaign. She's been to the state twice. There's a lot of interest around her, particularly as a woman. Then after that, Jay Inslee is coming in tomorrow. There's a lot of kicking the tires and trying to figure out where things stand. But people are very far from committing unless it's Bernie, and a lot of people are with Bernie. But other than that, it's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, who's going to come through.
Well, that's what happens with the Bs. Bernie, Biden, Bloomberg, Beto. They're all the Bs who are all men, have to make up the mind. The women are not, Ruth, are not waiting to make up their minds. They're in this baby, which is usually the opposite. But they're the ones making the fight. And the word fight is big.
How great is this? How great is it that okay, I'm going to tell you, I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic that there's just not one woman in the race who is identified as the woman in the race. This is not the year of the woman. This is the year of women. And where
as they say in Philly, the woman.
And where being a woman is not an anomaly, and it's not an oddity.
I'm sorry to push it. Is this coming forward from Me Too, from all the stuff that's happened? Is this part of that?
It's part of that, but it's also part of, hello, it's 2019, last I checked, and women are half the planet and half the sky and more than half of the electorate. So about darn time, I'd say.
Well, Jamal, explain the half the sky part to me. I think the Democrats have been a party which is predominated by women. It's a fact, just numbers in terms of like California, and places like that. You can look at the numbers, 60% in some places. The Republican Party has a sort of symmetric advantage among men. But what do you make of this year? Because it looks to me like it looks like a woman will actually not have a glass ceiling, will have something of an edge going into this race.
I'm going to give a little bit of credit here to Hillary Clinton also. Right. Hillary Clinton ran this campaign that a lot of women were really invested in. They thought she could win. They thought up until the night of the election that she was going to win. And she didn't win. And what we saw, not only for president, we saw these women run for every office across the state. We don't think about this that much. Democrats won 4 Democratic women became governors this last election. We don't talk about them enough.
So there's a crack in the ceiling.
We're seeing
You're saying there's a crack in the ceiling.
This leadership of women is starting to really take hold in the country.
Well, let's talk about today. According to Politico, Harris's announcement on Martin Luther King Jr. Day was steeped in symbolism. Her aide said the red and yellow color scheme, by the way, for Harris's campaign logo was inspired by former Representative Shirley Chisholm of New York, whose 1972 run for president was the first by a black woman from a major political party. Harris's video, by the way, outlines the theme of the career prosecutor's candidacy for the people. Ruth, let's talk about this. Let me go to Jamal. I've got to go to Jamal on this for obvious reasons. But I get the feeling that she's going to set up her headquarters in Baltimore. Yeah. Largely African-American town.
Yeah.
She's...
I don't understand that.
I'll explain.
I don't understand why she's in Baltimore. She's from Oakland. So she should be in Oakland.
She wants to win the South Carolina primary. That's what I did.
So put her headquarters in South Carolina. I think that she's got a lot of strengths here. She's got a bio. She's got a record. She's a prosecutor with a heart. She's done a lot to deal with keeping people out of recidivism.
Is she seen as African American? Is she seen as African American?
Is the organization that she pulls up? Yes, I think she's seen as African American. The fact she was at Howard University today, one of the oldest. They call themselves the oldest. I went to Morehouse. I think we're a little bit older. But she was at Howard University today. When she did her announcement press conference, she's going to South Carolina in the first week.
Yes.
She is really planting her feet in the African American community. I think she's going to be a very strong candidate. Now, Cory Booker is also going to do the same thing.
Is he running? He's another B. Where is he?
Cory
One
Booker,
of the Bs, and he's not
got a great political organization. He's doing it. So I think there's going to be a little bit of fight. But you can't count out Joe Biden in South Carolina. He's been spending time down there for 10 years, and people on the ground in that state say that he's got a lot of really good relationships that are very strong. He rode with Barack Obama and in the black community. He rode with Barack Obama for 8 years, and a lot of African Americans give him a lot of credit for that. I think if he gets in the race, he's going to be formidable. But today is Kamala Harris's day, and she deserves the credit for this day because she's helping to set the pace for this entire race.
Well, meanwhile, a celebration today for Martin Luther King Day, Kirsten Gillibrand attacked Donald Trump for creating racial divisions. Let's watch.
Our president has chosen to tear this country apart on every line, every division, every racial line, every religious line. He chooses to divide us community by community. He has inspired a hate and a darkness in this country that I have never witnessed myself. He is tearing apart the very fabric of who we are as a nation, our very common decency. And that is what we are being called to fight against.
Ronald Reagan once said, sell the difference. He was good on television. He did a lot of television. I just heard how Kamala Harris is going to sell the difference. She's African American. She's going to spend a lot of time in Baltimore, South Carolina. Isn't that what's going on? There's so many candidates potentially. We're talking maybe 2 or 3 dozen candidates. They have to, even on the left wheel, which a lot of them are on, they have to sell the difference.
And, you know, we don't know yet who is going to emerge, who is going to catch fire, who is going to just have that spark with voters. I'm not betting on anybody.
You're not betting?
I'm not betting.
I think you're a pundit.
I am not. I'm too smart a pundit to bet right now.
Go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing that today really speaks at is how African-American voters are going to really decide who the Democratic nominee is in 2020. They did in 2008. They certainly did in 2016. That was one of the biggest differences between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders was her support among African-American voters. And I think if you look back 20, 30 years ago, you would say the structural advantages would benefit someone like Joe Biden, the former vice president, or Bernie Sanders, the guy who came in number 2 last time. They have name recognition. They have a fundraising network. But the structural advantages in 2020 are so set up for someone exactly like Kamala Harris, not only because she's a woman and she's a minority, she's younger, whereas the party's looking to be younger. California's primary is sitting there on March 3rd, which is going to really change sort of the dynamics. And she is, or so far anyway, perfectly understanding her advantages, and she's playing right into it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.